My brother insured my life and tried to kill me. Yeah, it sounds crazy, but you haven't heard how I turned his own plan against him. Now he's in the hospital, and I'm watching his entire scheme fall apart, and this is just the beginning. My name is Alex, I'm 26, and if anyone had ever told me that my older brother Tom could pull something truly sinister, I would have laughed. We grew up in a normal family, no wild drama. Sure, we argued like brothers do, but it was all within reason. Tom was always the one who played by the rules, the typical good guy who knew how to handle himself in any situation. It all started pretty innocently when Tom suddenly took out a hefty life insurance policy on me. He said it was for family security. Okay, I thought, nothing strange about that. He was always the cautious type, the kind of guy who'd be the first to get insurance and double-check every detail. I didn't give it much thought. Tom was just being Tom. But then things started getting weird. Tom became unusually interested in my health. At first it seemed like concern, but over time, there was this strange, almost obsessive focus. He started offering me all these natural teas and remedies more often. I thought, all right, he's just trying to help me stay healthy. But phrases like, you need to take care of yourself, or this will cleanse your system, started to sound off. The more he repeated them, the more I felt like something bigger was going on. Okay, picture an ordinary evening. Tom and I are sitting in the kitchen. I'm scrolling through my phone, and he suddenly puts another mug of his super healthy concoction in front of me. His overly caring tone was driving me nuts. Bro, you should try this. It cleanses your system. I drink it every day. Yeah, right. Like I didn't see him chugging beer every night and munching on chips. All right. I'm not the type to immediately suspect my brother of something shady. I take a sip. And what? The taste of that tea. Let's just say it could have been used to clean engines, but definitely not for cleansing the body. You get the idea. As soon as I tasted it, I got suspicious. I'm not paranoid, but something clicked in my head. This isn't right. It wasn't just a strange flavor. Something was seriously off. I put the cup down and said I didn't want any more. Naturally, Tom acted a little hurt. Oh, come on, bro. You don't trust me? After that evening, I couldn't sleep. Everything around me felt off. Tom was acting normal, but inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Late that night, I heard him whispering on the phone. He was pacing around the house, speaking quietly, but loud enough for me to catch bits of the conversation. It has to work. The money is safe. My heart started racing. Something was definitely wrong, and I couldn't get it out of my head. After that night with the creepy tea, something inside me clicked. I couldn't just sit back and wait for things to clear up on their own. Tom was acting way too suspicious, and I knew I had to dig deeper. When he left the house again, I broke all the rules. But who was going to stop me? I went straight to his office. Invading his privacy? Pfft, like that mattered when my mind was racing with anxiety. I felt like some nosy detective digging through his papers. Everything seemed like boring nonsense until I found the documents. Not just any papers, but an actual life insurance policy. On my life. And what really sent me over the edge, Tom was the beneficiary. That meant if something happened to me, he'd get a huge payout. My heart stopped and my hands started shaking. His weird behavior suddenly started to fit together like a sinister puzzle. But the scariest part? These weren't just my suspicions. I found a few strange receipts for the purchase of chemicals, and they weren't the kind of substances you use for cleaning the house. That moment woke me up to the reality that something far darker was happening than I ever could have imagined. All those miracle teas and health concerns now felt even more disturbing. Okay, let's be honest. I couldn't believe that Tom was actually capable of something like this. My brother, the guy who always seemed way too straight-laced to pull off something so dark. But damn, all the evidence pointed to it. No matter how hard I tried to convince myself that this was just some wild paranoia, the reality was too obvious. The insurance policy, the receipts for chemicals, yeah, this wasn't just brotherly concern, and that's when it hit me. I couldn't just sit back and wait for this whole thing to blow up in my face, but acting rashly would have been stupid. I decided to play it smart. Every time Tom offered me one of his miracle brews, I'd pretend to drink it, smile like an idiot, and then dump it down the sink as soon as he turned around. What else could I do? Never thought I'd be playing games like this with my own brother. Meanwhile, I started gathering evidence. Screenshots of his messages, photos of the insurance documents, and those suspicious receipts for chemicals he claimed were for cleaning the house. Yeah, right. I had a clear goal: to expose Tom without getting caught up in his mess myself. How was I going to pull it off? Honestly, I had no idea yet. But I wasn't going to play by his rules anymore. One night, as I was sitting in my room trying not to think about the surprise my brother was cooking up, I overheard him talking on the phone again. He was in another room, but loud enough for me to catch a few key phrases. "This is the final step. Just a little more." Dude, at that moment, a cold sweat broke out over me. I didn't know exactly what he was planning, but one thing was clear. It wasn't good. You know, sometimes there's a moment when you realize that waiting any longer is pure madness. That's exactly the situation I found myself in. All the weirdness, suspicions, and documents, none of it made sense anymore. So, when Tom once again offered me his miracle tea after dinner, I knew I had to act right then and there. We were sitting at the table, talking about random stuff as if nothing unusual was going on. "How was your day?" Tom asked with his usual calm smile. "And me?" I smiled back, but inside I was boiling. Automatically I switched our cups, doing it in a way that wouldn't make Tom suspicious. It felt like I was in some kind of crime thriller where my life was on the line. Everything looked normal, nothing out of the ordinary. We sipped our tea, talking about trivial things, and at first, nothing happened. I started to think maybe I was just overreacting. Maybe this was all paranoia, and Tom was just trying to be a caring brother. But then, a few minutes later, things started to change. Tom suddenly turned pale. His smile shifted to an expression I had never seen before, a mix of surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. He grabbed his stomach, trying to say something, but the words wouldn't come out. At that moment, I just sat there watching him, not fully understanding what was happening. Tom tried to stand up, but his body wasn't cooperating. He desperately grabbed at the chair, the edge of the table, trying to stay on his feet, and finally reached for his phone. His hands were shaking so badly that it seemed like he wouldn't be able to call for help, or even hold on to the phone. And sure enough, all he managed to do was drop it on the floor. I just sat there and watched. No, it wasn't that I was enjoying it, but you know, this was one of those moments when you realize the choice has been made. Adrenaline was rushing through me. Inside, everything was boiling. Was this extreme? Honestly, yes. But after everything that had happened, it was the only way to protect myself. Hold on to morality in a situation like this? Ha, not this time. A few minutes passed, and I realized that if I didn't call for help, things would get even worse. I dialed 911 myself, and when the paramedics arrived, Tom was barely conscious. They quickly took him away, and I was left alone in the house where it had all just gone down. Everything felt surreal, like it had all been a dream. I sat there trying to process what had just happened. It felt like the world had started spinning again, but inside, there was still an emptiness. The next day, I went to the hospital. It seemed like an ordinary visit, just checking up on Tom. But honestly, my mind was spinning. How do you even act in a situation like this? My brother had just tried to poison me, and now he was lying in the hospital because his plan had backfired. I stood at the reception desk, and the nurse looked at me like she knew more than she was letting on. A few minutes later, a doctor approached me and said they had called the police. They had reason to believe that Tom had been poisoned. And that's when I felt like the world suddenly sped up. The police? Poisoning? Well, they didn't know who had tried to poison whom, but I knew exactly how it had all gone down. When the cops came over, I realized this was my chance. I told them everything, about Tom's strange behavior, his miracle teas, and all the weird hints. But the most important thing, I showed them the evidence. Screenshots of his messages, the insurance documents, and those receipts for the chemicals, everything I had. The cops listened to me, exchanged glances, and their faces turned much more serious. They started asking questions, and I realized this wasn't just a fact-checking exercise. This was the start of an investigation. Tom had spent months crafting a plan that now seemed obvious. But this was only the first step. The doctors had done their part, and now it was the police's turn. What's next? Uncertainty still hung in the air, and I knew this was far from over. Now, Tom is officially under investigation. Yeah, all our friends and family who used to sing his praises have completely turned their backs on him. He was the perfect older brother, a real role model. And now all of that came crashing down in an instant, like a house of cards collapsing when the wind blows a little too hard. Everything he had spent years building was destroyed. The irony is that his greed and desire for easy money were what brought him down. And me? Well, I decided I'd had enough. Leaving the city was the only real option. That house, those streets, they were soaked with the mess that had happened. Every corner reminded me of what had gone down and what could have happened if I hadn't woken up in time. Moving was like shedding old skin. I needed to get free of all of it. Sometimes sitting in my new apartment with a view of something much nicer than old memories, I wonder, could I have stopped all this sooner? Could I have prevented what it all turned into? But to be honest with myself, Tom had chosen his side a long time ago. I just didn't see it in time. And no matter how you look at it, he put himself in this situation. Now his life has fallen apart, and I'm starting a new one.